You're listening to Deviatus, a podcast produced every 2 weeks about the paranormal and the unexplained. My name's Jeremy, and you can follow the show at deviatus.com. Or, if you like social media, you can find the show on Facebook, or you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at DeviatusPod. This is episode number 5. Today we have Stan Thompson and Greg Stevens from San Diego Paranormal Eye. We'll talk about this paranormal investigation group and their mission to help people in the community. And in addition, we'll discuss how you could join them on an investigation soon. So without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the interview. Thank you for joining us on Deviatus. Today we have Stan Thompson and Greg Stevens from San Diego Paranormal Eye here via Skype. Stan and Greg, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm kind of throwing you a curveball at the beginning here. I heard you had an investigation last night when we were talking on email yesterday. Can you tell us anything about any potential evidence you might have caught on that investigation?
Last night we actually went up to Alpine Cemetery. It's actually one of our favorite places to go. I've actually been going up there personally for about 5 years. And the team, we usually like to try to go up there about once a month. There's some spirits that we actually know by name, and we actually like to visit with them and see if there's anything that they do want to tell us. There was actually quite a few things that did happen last night as far as being able to contact them and to speak with them and find out if there's any way that we can help them or anything that they would like to tell us. And, there's a lot of stories. Probably that's the most favorite place, if I had to pick anywhere to go, would be Alpine Cemetery in Alpine, California.
Oh, that's great. Greg, did you want to add anything to that?
I actually wasn't there last night. I was actually at work, so I can't really add anything about last night. But I will say that Alpine is usually it's a very interesting place because there's, like Stan said, there's a number of entities that will talk with us, and we've gotten a lot of answers just by, and we've verified with a number of different devices that we've used along with, people's sensitivity to capture and ensure that we're talking to the same entities. Like dowsing rods, spirit boxes, echo boxes, different cameras, all these to, capture the same entities that we've been talking to. So, when we say we're talking to them, we actually have been talking to them.
Well, you bring up something interesting. That the fact that you're investigating in a cemetery leads to one of my questions I was looking at a little bit later. But since we're on the topic, a lot of people have said that, investigating a cemetery could either be viewed as maybe disrespectful to the dead or maybe just not be in the best, the best mindset if you're going to go and do that sort of thing there. They think that spirits could be restless or otherwise, not be at peace. What would you say to that kind of a criticism?
I think it really has to go with your purpose of going. Like Alpine, I use that as an example. Before we actually go into any place, I let them know that the reason that we're there. A lot of people, there's a huge difference between ghost hunting and paranormal investigating. Ghost hunting, a lot of people, they're trying to contact spirits, trying to make them talk. What we try to do with paranormal investigating is basically, they're not actors. They're not, puppets that you can make do what you want to do, and it's really disrespectful if you do try to do that. So basically, when I go into the cemetery, I let them know that, hey, we've been talking for 5 years now. You guys know that I'm a friend of yours. If there is anything you want to say, we are here tonight to learn from you and to listen to you. People pass you by every day visiting their loved ones in the cemetery, but no one actually takes the time to talk with you. There's a lot of spirits there that do have unresolved issues. There's a lot of spirits that have things that they do want to say. We really haven't caught a lot of negative as if we're disturbing anyone, when we go there. And I think it all comes in from being respectful. You have to remember that they were people also when they were alive, and they're people when they're dead. And they have to be, you have to respect them. You have to, show them that you do care, and they will speak with you. And I think that's the reason that our group does catch a lot of the evidence that we do, that a lot of other people do not capture, is because we do, show respect to them.
And going along with that, we also don't go into the areas where, we know that negative entities are, because we just don't want to deal with them. We don't, we've gone, we've heard stories of people going into certain areas and they get stones thrown at them or things like that, and we just don't go there. We're just trying to communicate with the ones that want to communicate with us. Otherwise, if they don't want to communicate with us, we won't communicate.
Well, you did mention having run into some spirits with maybe some unresolved issues. Are there any particular issues that you've maybe considered your group to be responsible for helping resolve?
I have a spirit guide. His name is Philip. I know exactly where he sort of connected with me, and it was in Old Town San Diego. He's actually a little boy. He's actually a little boy. He's about 6 or 7 years old. And some of the spirits, when we ask about moving over, and I always pose that to them as if you would like to move over. A lot of them don't move over because, they have religious upbringing or teachings that, they're scared to move over, because they feel like, they didn't do a certain thing while they were still alive. When I mentioned Philip and that Philip can show them the way to the light, the way that I posed it to them, because a lot of them immediately before I started doing this would, start, no. And so the way that I started, presenting it to them is if you would like to move over, and you would like to be with your loved ones and you're a little bit nervous about that, Philip will show you the way to the light if you would like to go. So as far as resolving, we've actually, as far as home investigations and also, even historicals or even Alpine Cemetery, I know that Philip has helped some of them, because you hear the same voices coming through. And as soon as I mention Philip, tell them about him, you'll hear them start going, Philip, and then they'll quit really talking with us, and then after a few minutes, then basically you don't hear their voice any longer, and sometimes I will ask Philip, if they moved over, and the group knows Philip's voice, it does come through quite a bit, and, he will say they're gone, So as far as helping resolve things, I think we have, and that's the main reason that we do this is to help, just like with helping other people, we want to help people that have passed on.
Now, the other thing on it too, Jeremy, you got to remember, this isn't like, you're sitting there talking to a person right in front of you. Sometimes it's very hard to communicate with them. We try to use different devices to communicate with them, but sometimes those devices are, you get yes/no responses. And so you have to think of questions to try to figure out what they're trying to portray to you through yes or no questions. And it can get difficult sometimes. The other thing is you got to find, just what they're looking for. Some of these people they're scared to move on. They're scared to, move on because they've done something in their lives. And, you've got to, and that's half of what we do is try to encourage them to look past that and just go towards the light to move on.
Well, and you're probably tying a little bit into the mission of SDPE there. Can you maybe take a step further and just elaborate how SDPE was formed and your current mission, and perhaps each of you could let us know how you got involved?
Sure. Actually, there was an SDPE team quite a few number of years ago, and I was on the team for a while. When the team actually disbanded, the president of that team actually moved to the East Coast. I was approached by our former webmaster, which was Dan Scott. And by the way, he does have a great website. If you guys are ever looking at places to go in San Diego, it's called San Diego Haunted. And he actually approached me. He was the one that actually started that team. And he wanted a team that he could actually write articles about. And he said, I remember when you were on the team, you do things that I don't see other people do. He's a very big skeptic. And he says, when you talk to Philip, and I hear Philip's voice, I've heard it enough to know, and I've heard it so many times, that I know that, who you're talking to is a little boy named Philip. I've heard it so many times. So he says, I really want a serious paranormal team that will do things scientifically, which we always go in, first to debunk and see if there actually is something there. And then if there is, as Greg was mentioning, when we use equipment, we call it layer upon layer of evidence. We use a lot of equipment that is scientific. It measures, electromagnetic energy in the air. It measures ionization. It measures movement. So we try to capture something that physically could be happening at the times these paranormal things are happening. We use a lot of cameras and different types of cameras, night vision cameras, full spectrum, IR. And when you catch different things, that are happening at the same time on different pieces of equipment, it's that layer upon layer of evidence that you can use to show people, that these things are happening. The sensitivity is great. Some of us on the team, myself, you put me in a dark room, I can see them. I don't know why. I've had that gift ever since I was a child. But it's great to have the equipment, for people that are skeptics or that don't have that ability, so that we can use that to show them. As far as the mission, just sort of winding up on that question, our mission is to help spirits. It's not just to let people know if they have a spirit in the house. We want to know why they're there, what issues they have, why they haven't moved on. Is there anything that we can do to assist you? So that's really the mission, is to, just like we like to help people, we want to help spirits also.
And how did each of you get involved?
Well, like I said, Dan actually approached me about being president of SDPE, because at that time there was no team. And that was it'll be 4 years in October. It was sort of new to me, because I had always done investigations with maybe one or two other people, but not with a whole team of very talented individuals that do have gifts. So it was definitely a blessing to get with those people and to learn how they investigate, and to learn how you can come together with all your individual gifts, and you can make a very special moment, by putting all those gifts together. I'll let Greg share how, he sort of came with the team. So.
Mm-hmm. Basically, Jeremy, we have what's called we are on Meetup.com, and we hold a meetup every month to get people to come out and come join us and show them how to go out and investigate. Show them how to use the equipment and show them how to do the things that we do. And I went on one of those meetups because I had spent a number of years just kind of investigating on my own, and I was like, well, this kind of sounds really, really cool. So I went on one of the meetups, and sometime later, Stan contacted me, and he was like, hey, we kind of really liked you. Is there any chance that you'd be willing to maybe join the team? And I was like, yeah. So that's how I joined the team.
That's great. It must have been pretty exciting to get that call.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. It was very exciting, because this is something I've been wanting to do for many, many years.
So how do you manage to run the entire operation for free?
Very carefully. No, it's we actually pay dues to the team, and the dues basically go for the basic running of the team. Most of the equipment I buy myself, and I try to pick equipment, again, that is scientific, that you can get some validity, not things that... basically I hope this, does what it says it does. And we go through a testing process with each piece of equipment. As far as running the team goes, like I said, most of it comes from our dues. I decided from the very beginning that if we're going to try to help people with home investigations, I had run into so many of those people that people had really taken advantage of them. And they had charged them, like $800 as an example, to come in to try to rid their home of spirits, without even doing a walkthrough or anything to see if anything was there. And it's sort of a surprise when they ask us, how much do you charge? And we said, we don't charge. It is a surprised look they usually have on their face about 100% of the time. But it's something that I look as a way to help people. And as long as I can do it, we're going to do it. There will be no charge. Yeah, like I said, we like to help people, we like to help spirits, and we would like to do it as a gift.
What would you say the average number of maybe residential investigations that you and your team do each year?
We try not to do over one a month, because if you're going to do a really thorough job, because the way that we approach investigations is sort of like a process. Personally, myself, I don't actually talk to the people. Being a sensitive and going into a home to try to figure out what's going on and to see if someone indeed is there. We have a home investigation coordinator that basically they contact. It's an email usually through our website, and there's a questionnaire that they fill out. And then we usually will start with a walkthrough, which will be myself and one other person, so we can determine if indeed there is paranormal activity happening in the home. After the walkthrough, then basically I will sit with the clients and let them know what I observed and what I saw. And the majority of the time is unbelievable to the clients, since I, have not heard anything that's going on in the home, how a lot of the times it does match up with what they're experiencing. Now, I have been in homes that there is nothing there. It could be something that, is happening that can definitely be explained, But, for the homes that do have entities in them, it is very exciting for me as a sensitive to be able to hit on the key points without ever speaking to the client or knowing anything about what's happening.
Greg, quick question for you. What do you think your most compelling experience with the paranormal has been?
My most compelling experience with the paranormal? Well, compelling. What do you mean by compelling? As far as...
Well, I guess maybe most convincing or most, something that just scared the bejesus out of you.
Scared me? Well, I wouldn't really say scared, but it gave me a little bit of wow. We were down in the Birdcage Theater in Tombstone, Arizona, and I was in the poker room, and I'm the only one in the building, down in the bottom, setting up cameras. Middle of the night, it's dark, and as I'm sitting there setting up one of the cameras, getting ready to move on, they have this one little hole that goes underneath the stage for the theater, and they say there's something down there called the creeper, and I was standing right there, and I felt something grab my belt and almost yank me down.
Oh, wow.
And kind of stood back up, and I was like, okie dokie. Finished what I was doing and just walked out. I mean, I did walk back in, about an hour or two later by myself. Again, only one in the building, pitch dark, but it threw me for a little bit of a loop right there. And, I've had other times where I've woken up in the middle of the night and there's just something standing right over me, just looking down at me in the face, and I'm like, well, hello, how are you?
Wow, I don't know if I'd have the wherewithal to greet an entity doing that to me. Same question for you, Stan.
I'll share a story that I shared with some of the individuals last night. There was a sister of one of our investigators that actually went out to us, but we were doing a home investigation, and this is sort of a twofold story. We had a new member on our team, and very skeptic person. And when I say skeptic, he had to see it to believe it. He had to hear it to believe it. He believes when I see something because we've proven it so many times with a lot of our equipment, but he wanted to experience it himself. And so we went into the home, and we were sitting there deciding, the first phase of the investigation, how we were going to plan this out. And all of a sudden he heard a growl. In fact, all of us heard it. And it wasn't just a very small growl. It was like probably a good 10 seconds. The client had no animals at all, And of course, we tried to debunk it. We went outside, we looked for animals. We asked if the people, because we do have two teams when we do this, that we usually don't like to go over 3 people on a team. So, we'll send in 3 people. 3 people are waiting outside to come in. And they heard nothing outside. There was no animals that they heard, And so he said, do you see someone? And I said, yeah, he's over by the fireplace. I said, it's what we call a negative entity. It's just someone that likes to scare people, or they're not a very pleasant person to be around. In other words, he was protecting his area, And I just sort of laughed and said, knock it off, But it's sort of funny to see a person that he was a fireman and, a very man's man. And for him to turn into a 6-year-old and said, that was a growl, and see his face, and we just sort of laughed and said, that's not going to be your first one or your last one. You're going to hear a lot of those.
And Jeremy, real quick,
mm-hmm.
The thing about it is if you do this enough, you get pushed, prodded, poked, pulled, you see stuff, you hear stuff, after a little bit of time. I won't say you desensitize to it,
mm-hmm.
but you do get used to it. It becomes not as scary. And when you realize that most of these things that you're dealing with are just people that no longer have bodies, it kind of takes away a lot of the scariness.
Well, now, Stan, you did refer to the negative entity as being a person. How would you tell the difference between a person and something that's more evil or demonic, as some would consider them?
That's a big misconception that I think a lot of people make, because you see on TV and everything's demonic, or at least half of everything's demonic. I've done this for years and years, and I would say I've run into one thing in all the years that I've ever done that I would consider demonic. I remember walking into the room, and I remember telling one of our team members, I just sort of went, huh. And when I do that, they're like, okay, this is going to be good. What are you experiencing? I said, I don't think that this, if you want to call it a person, whatever it is, this entity, I don't think it ever had a body. I don't think it ever lived. It's not like anything that I've ever seen before. And I had this sort of taste come into my mouth. It was sort of like a copper type taste. It was on my skin. It sort of felt like dried mud. It just, the room felt like it was void of air. That was the only time, well, I would say, yeah, that was the only time I would say that I know 100% for sure is demonic. Now, a negative entity, I'm a firm believer in it, and this is from years of doing this, that the way that you are in this life, you're going to be the exact same way in the other life. I mean, if you look at people in life today, I mean, you have murderers, you have people that want to hurt people, that they do all type of things, or they want to scare people or have dominion over people. You'll run into a lot of those, and a lot of them will try to make you think they are demonic. But luckily for me, being a sensitive, I can normally tell, no, you're just a negative entity. You need to go over there and leave us alone. We will not talk with you. We don't want to talk with you. So it's a little bit easier for me being a sensitive to, which I can let the group know, and to let you know, SDPE, we don't really work with demonic, but I'm going to be honest with you. Like I said, I've only run into it one time, and I think a lot of people really get confused with negative entities and also with demonic activity. And your chances of running into a demon, they have much more important things to do. It's going to be like winning the lottery. It's not going to be like you see on TV, where it's every other episode is demonic. So,
well, and I recently had a guest on my show, Elizabeth Saint from the Ghosts of Shepherdstown TV show, and she identifies as a sensitive as well, as opposed to being, psychic, or I think she also brought up the term empath. How do you define being sensitive?
Being sensitive, I think you can learn to a certain point, but unless you're born with it, I don't think you'll ever be as fully sensitive as a true sensitive. When I was a child, it was a very trying time for me, because I didn't understand it. If I slept with the lights off, I would see people move around my room. I would see, feet underneath the door, things of that nature, and it scared me a lot. And my mom was always wondering why I was such a nervous child, but I was always scared to confide in her. I remember as a child when my great-grandmother died, and we were not in the house, and I remember the front door opening, and as a child, I was probably 6 or 7 at the time, but I was always a nervous child, and I never confided in her either, why I was nervous. But she would always walk up, and she would, put her hand on my shoulder, and she would pat it, and she'd say, everything's going to be okay, And I remember when she passed away, my mom was at that time sort of keeping vigil around her bedside, and they were waiting for her to pass on. She was well up into her 80s at the time. And I remember her coming in the door, and she patted me on the shoulder and said, everything will be okay. And then she walked out, and it was about 10 minutes later, my mom had come in, and she was crying, and she said that my great-grandmother passed away about 30 minutes ago. I didn't, I couldn't confide in her as a child and say, oh, she came to visit me, But sometimes, like I said, there's a lot of people on our team that have been around me for a while, and I've worked with them, and, with their gifts, because everybody on our team has a specific gift. They've learned, to become more sensitive. They can sense spirits being around. They might not be able to see them, but they can sense them. They know what the energy feels like. And I think a lot of them have been 100% correct on whether they're positive or negative. So,
did you ever confide in your mom about that experience?
We talked about it recently. Actually, I talked with her this year, and she was glad that I finally confided in her to let her know, I had always grown up as a very nervous child. And I think, people at that time says, why didn't you confide in me? She never even questioned me on it. And she has a very religious upbringing that I think for her was hard to accept that, but she never doubted me or, said you shouldn't be doing this or anything like that, because she knows that I try to help people out. It's just in my nature to do so. And I think she knows that I try to help them out also.
I find that most people that are interested in the paranormal had some sort of childhood experience or sometime early in life. Greg, what was your first experience with the paranormal that you can recall?
My first experience with the paranormal is I grew up in a little town called Comanche, Iowa. Comanche, Iowa has the distinction of having the second largest tornado that ever touched down in the United States, basically bulldozed the town. So there was a whole lot of paranormal stuff going on around the cemetery there. Well, we put up our house. We just built a new house. My dad built it. And we put our house right next to the cemetery. And I don't know why, but that house, you could hear footsteps walking across. I mean, I could sit there and follow them, just footsteps walking across the upstairs. And I refused to go up to the upstairs by myself. If there was nobody else home, I would not go up there. One day I was sitting there, and it had a family room and had those big bay windows. And, usually I wasn't in the family room. I was in the kitchen, and I heard something in the family room. I was like, well, that's weird. I'm the only one home. So I kind of walk in the family room, and I hear something again. So I start, and I heard it towards the bay windows. So I start walking up to the bay windows. And I'm looking out the bay windows, and the glass was about, a couple inches from my face. And something punched the window so hard directly in front of my face, it should have shattered the window, to be honest with you. It should have absolutely shattered as hard as it got hit. And I went out the back door of the house, and I refused to come back until my parents came home that night. I was probably about 8.
Wow, that's pretty young. I know some people, myself included, are a little reluctant to start, tampering around with investigation for fear of either conjuring something up or bringing something home that might be difficult to get rid of. I mean, heaven forbid my kids start experiencing things like this. Have you guys ever had anything attach itself to you or follow you home?
When I first started doing this, in fact, one of the people I talked about or talked to about this, when I first started experiencing it, I said, why do spirits come up to me? And they said, well, a lot of times they're in darkness and they see you as a light and they head toward the light. Before I really understood about protection and about openings and closings and things of that nature, I have had some things that have, have attached themselves to me that I did have to get cleansed of. It's sort of a funny story that happened to me, and it was nothing negative at all. But there is a gentleman that actually helped to introduce me to my spirit guide. And I remember waking up about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was wide awake, and I heard footsteps in my bedroom. I sensed one of the biggest energies I've ever experienced in my life. And so, as Greg says, you sort of get desensitized to this, the longer you do it. So I basically went to the living room, and I laid down on the couch, and my cat, who normally is right on top of me the whole time that I'm awake, basically was sort of cowering under the furniture, and there was like footsteps walking behind the couch, and, a lot of activity happening, So I called him the next day, and I said, I think something followed me home from your house. And he says, do you think it might be your spirit guide? And I was like, I didn't even think of that, So that was sort of a, story that I think back and laugh about now, But as far as any place that we go, whether we go, we're taking people out on meetups, to teach them how to investigate or to go into homes or wherever we're at, Alpine Cemetery, historical investigations, we always do openings and closings, to put protection around us so things can't attach themselves to us. And we're also very, very careful about doing a closing to let them know that they're not allowed to go home with us. Since that time, no, I haven't had any attachments or anything of that nature since then. I've had ones that have tried to, but once we do the closing, then it basically will just, dissipate the energy and everything's fine.
How about for you, Greg?
The only time I've ever had anything follow me home was where we are actually right now. And that's the entity that I woke up and she was right in my face one night. She came from where we are in Nicole's apartment here, and she basically, I didn't do an opening and closing or anything like that. I just went home. And then the next night, she's right there in my face. I'm like, oh, well, okay. And then she went away and came back over here. So she decided that she didn't like me a whole lot. Started to be around Nicole again.
So how do you respond to skeptics who say this is all just a bunch of bull?
Actually, I love skeptics. I'd love them to come out on our meetups is where we normally run into them. Although we do run into some of them at home investigations. Usually there's, I won't say usually. Sometimes there is, if it's a couple, there is one person that believes and one that's a total skeptic. Oh, we can let them come in, but I don't believe any of this, When we share the evidence that we caught, one of them, we really don't talk about names or locations, but one of the ones that we actually did a walkthrough, we asked, we try to ask questions that aren't yes or no all the time because, those come through, a lot of times, and they're a lot of times not as much of an intellectual response as you would get from an exact question. I said, who was the president when you were alive? And they mentioned a name of a president, and I said, can you repeat that? Because I like to have validation that, that is the answer that we did here, and they said it again. So when we talked to the couple at the end, I said, okay, I told them, which rooms and who was in each room and how they responded to us, because this was a walkthrough again. And when I mentioned that question, and I mentioned the name of the president, and the person told me, okay, I'm a total skeptic, but, and I know that's the name of a president, but a family member of that person had passed away recently, and the name of their company was actually the name that was responded to us. It was a president's name, I will say that, but I think it sort of shook that person quite a bit, that the name number one was repeated twice, and it was the name of the company that they had started. And we've had things like that happen all the time. We run into skeptics at our meetups that basically, I just want to come out. I see these things happen on TV. Personally, I don't believe in it at all, but I wanted to go out just to see if there's just a sliver of truth, in what I'm seeing. And sometimes when you have like a diehard skeptic, it can really kill the energy. You don't have a lot of things that do happen. But a lot of times, when the spirits do know that someone, is a total disbeliever whatsoever, things will happen. And, I've seen a lot of people that things, have happened to them and that they have experienced, and it has changed their viewpoint of the paranormal. And then they continue to keep coming out, because they want to learn more about it.
The thing I like to do, Jeremy, whenever I find out that there's a skeptic in the group, I like to use dowsing rods a lot. So what I usually do is I hand them the dowsing rods and say, okay, here we go. You're gonna hold the dowsing rods, and so you're not manipulating them, and you tell me why these things are moving and answering our questions. And usually they get done, and they're like, I don't even know what to say to you anymore. I can't tell you why they were moving, but they were moving. They were answering questions. I mean, we even had them. I had one person so skeptical about it say, okay, I want to see the rods, basically cross, uncross, cross, uncross, and stay right there. And the rods did exactly that. They crossed, uncrossed, crossed, and uncrossed, and then stopped moving for like 2-3 minutes until we asked the question again. And his mouth was just like, okay, I'm just going to shut up now and just go over to this corner.
Well, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say it's pretty cool to see sometime when somebody just goes, "Wow, that made me think." Because I like people that think, that are open to different things, and so seeing somebody open themselves up is a cool experience for me.
And Jeremy, just so you know, we do have skeptics on our team, and it keeps us grounded. We always try to go into debunk, but it's really good when we have somebody that's looking things scientifically And if we hear a knock or we hear something in a house or whatever, we're always over there trying to figure out what could have created this. What is there anything man-made that could have done this? And there are a lot that we are able to disprove. So I think the skeptics on our team really help us. There's a lot of people that I want to know why this did this. Let's 100% make sure that this is either paranormal or not paranormal, and I think that's good. I'm really glad we have that on our team.
And getting into something real quick here, Jeremy, as Stan brought up, we won't, like we have various, outlets to, put out paranormal experiences out to people. We won't put something out until we 100% guarantee that this is something that happened. We won't, and half the time we won't even call it paranormal when we do put it out because, and we do invite people to say, hey, tell us what this is. Because, what, I can't tell you. So we want things to be absolutely, we have broken it down and broken it down and broken it down and said it's got, the only thing left is it's something paranormal. We've removed everything else that we know of, unless somebody else knows of something else.
Right. Well, I'm local here in San Diego County. If I wanted to join you in an investigation myself, how would I go about doing so?
The investigations that we actually take people along with, those are what we call our meetup events. We do them once a month. There's very few teams in San Diego that do this, and we do it in a way that I've never seen any other team do it before. In fact, we've even had other members of other teams, that have come down, from like LA or other places, because we're in San Diego also, like you let people use your equipment, and I'm just like, yes, we do, and the reason that we do this is basically to teach you, this is how we investigate. I know what you see on TV and everything, but this is how we investigate. This is how we catch evidence, and this is the equipment that we use. And we want to teach them how to use that equipment and show them scientifically how we try to prove whether something is paranormal or not. And so it's a very unique experience with them because, a lot of people will call it, I'm doing a meetup, we're going out ghost hunting. Well, we don't, number one, ghost hunt. Number two, we basically, we call it an investigation. And we will actually spend, like 4 hours out with everyone. We usually start at around 8 o'clock at night, and then we finish up around midnight. And we go in various locations around San Diego County. And we have sort of a following of people that sign up. We do sell out a lot of meetups because we do have a lot of people that continue to come out. They want to experience that evidence, that they catch every month. And they're very excited about going out.
Well, I think I certainly want to be respectful of your time here. Where's the best place to follow your projects, learn more about your work, or connect with you?
What I'm going to do is tell you a couple of them, and then if you don't mind, Jeremy, I'd like to introduce our media manager. Her name is Nicole Shuck, to tell you about a few others that we have and some other projects that we try to do to keep people interested in the paranormal. One of the best places is Facebook.com. It's just under San Diego Paranormal Eye. That's EYE. And if you look us up, it will have all of our meetups that are coming up. You also can go on meetup.com. It's one word, meetup.com, and you can sign up for our investigations that we do with the public once a month. San Diego Paranormal Eye.
Search San Diego Paranormal Eye when you do go up on meetup.com.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to introduce Nicole, and she's going to tell you a few other places. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Hi, Nicole.
Hey, Jeremy. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so we have a couple of Instagrams. We have Instagram. You can follow us on San Diego Paranormal Eye. We've got some great stuff on there. Elizabeth Saint just actually followed us last week on that, which was really cool.
Oh, nice.
And on Twitter, we're at the handle at sdparanormal.com. And then also we have our Tumblr account, which is San Diego Paranormal 2. And we look for us on YouTube under San Diego Paranormal Eye.
So you guys are all over the place.
We also do Periscope sessions also, which are sort of like live broadcasts that we do post. Nicole, you want to tell them about that one? Or?
Yeah, usually we go off to, it's usually our off weekends, I feel like. And if we have some free time on Saturday nights, we're like, hey, let's go to Alpine or Presidio or something like that. And then we'll take a piece of equipment with us. Our last one we just did was up in Alpine, and we just did the Paranormal Puck 2, which was really cool because it's in beta testing right now. Barely any other teams have it. So we just did that up there, and we just did a quick little periscope, and we've got some really good positive feedback on that, and then I'll repost that up on YouTube.
And Jeremy, the last place I wanted to tell you is our regular website, which is www.sandiegoparanormaleye.com. Elizabeth Smith, she's one of the greatest web designers I've ever seen, and she's actually done a great job with our regular website, and that's also a good place. Also, Facebook is going to probably be the most that will stay up to date because we can update that daily. So.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your time today, and I will definitely put all these links in the show notes when the episode airs. Again, thanks for being on Deviatus. I hope to maybe catch up with you in person soon. We'll have to see. I'll go check out Meetup.
That'd be great. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, it'd be awesome, Jeremy.
All right, thanks, guys, and you have a great rest of your afternoon.
You too.
You too. Thank you, Jeremy.
All right. I want to send a big thank you to Stan, Greg, and Nicole, who joined us there towards the end. I think I'm definitely going to be taking them up on their offer to join an investigation. You can find this episode's show notes at deviatus.com/SDPE. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, please get in touch with me on deviatus.com, on Facebook, or if you'd like to chat with me on Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at DeviatusPod. Until next time, thanks for listening.